So there is, of course, an absolute plethora of videos on YouTube of Americans talking about their opinions of Australia. But when you look for people from other countries talking about Australia, it's harder to find stuff. This video is from a creator who is Canadian. So, over the border, similar notions, I think, to a lot of Americans, but I thought it would be interesting to have a look at what a Canadian thinks of Australia.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Cassie here, and today I'm going to be doing a video for 15 weird things that I noticed after moving to the Gold Coast in Australia.
So at the risk of sounding pernickety, that's 6, that's not 15. And I think she realised from the way she kept trying to change her hands around that she was struggling a bit to figure out how to do it. I get how it represents 15, with the hand on the left being 10 and the hand on the right being 5, but to me that still looks like she's saying 6. Pernickety, come at me all you like, just seems odd to me. Now, she mentioned that she's talking about the Gold Coast, so we need to keep that in mind. This is all about the Gold Coast. She isn't familiar with other areas of Australia.
So some of these are going to be just specific to Queensland and the Gold Coast, and then some of these are kind of just Australia in general. So let's get started. So the very first thing that was super weird is that they call their green and red peppers capsicum, and I was like, what? I'm gonna spell that out for you here. Capsicum. I went to Subway and I was trying to order like half a sub, and I was picking out my vegetables and I was like, oh, green peppers, and they're like, what? And then my boyfriend told me they're not called green peppers, they're called capsicum, and I was like, ew, okay, can I have some capsicum?
Now obviously Mr. Google isn't always 100% correct, but I looked this up because I was curious, because a lot of the time when people talk about the way we name things, it turns out that America is on its own little island and the thing that they call it is unique to America. But in terms of bell peppers and capsicums, I found out that America and Canada and places in the UK refer to them as bell peppers, whereas in Australia, New Zealand and apparently India, we call them capsicum. The origins of capsicum is that is actually from the scientific name, which is Capsicum annum, I believe. To me, calling it a pepper when it's not spicy seems just really, really odd. But I'd imagine for people who call them green peppers or bell peppers or red peppers, that us calling them capsicum seems really, really odd.
Number 2, hot dogs here are not called hot dogs, they're called snags. S-N-A-G-S.
I'll just say it for everyone out there who is thinking the exact same thing. Dear God, here we go again.
And a snag is pretty much a wiener in a piece of toast. So I'll insert another picture right here showing you what a snag looks like. They find us calling it hot dog very odd, which makes sense because like it's not a hot dog. But at the same time, what does snag even mean? I think snag sounds pretty weird too. Plus, why would you want it in a piece of toast? Like, you can have it in a hot dog bun where it's like all nice and soft and plush, and it like holds the hot dog perfectly. So that's also strange, but you know, a snag is equally as delicious.
Honestly, how hard can it be? A hot dog is a hot dog. It's that highly processed thing with the red skin in a roll covered in sauce. That's a hot dog. A snag is a sausage. A sausage is not a hot dog. And she's managed to take it one step beyond everybody else and say that the snag is in toast. No. When you get a snag, you have it in bread. So it is every bit as soft as your hot dog roll. It's just that that's how you eat a snag as opposed to how you eat a hot dog.
Now on to the third thing that's really weird. So when I first got here, I needed to use transit as most people would, and I saw this sign. I'll insert a video clip of the bus stop having a sign that says, "Please wave down your bus driver." And I was like, what? Don't they just stop when they see someone at the stop? But no, that's not how it works here. If you don't physically wave down the bus like this, they're not gonna stop for you. That way they don't have to like make accident stops when those people are actually getting on a different bus, so that kind of situation wouldn't happen.
Now, I find that interesting. So, obviously, that doesn't happen in Canada. Does that mean that they only have specific routes, as in there's one bus stop and there's only one route for that bus stop? Because can you imagine here in Australia if every time a bus driver saw someone at a bus stop, they stopped and that person wasn't getting on? You'd never get anywhere.
Okay. Another weird thing about the buses, first of all, they're huge, and after I got into one, I was like, okay, it's really nice and spacious, it's nicely air conditioned, I like it. But the thing that really threw me off is buses here in the Gold Coast, they don't tell you what stop is next. So you know how buses usually have like a little, I don't know, LED light thing that will scroll and then tell you, okay, next stop is King Edward or something like that. But no, they don't have that here. It's literally just bus stopping and that's it. So you have to really pay attention to how many stops you're going past, or else you could easily miss your stop because you're never gonna know what stop you're at. And I don't understand how that works. I still cannot figure it out. Like, I just don't understand why. But that was very weird.
She uses the term weird a heck of a lot, doesn't she? Now, to me, it doesn't seem weird, for starters, that buses don't have the displays telling you where the next stop is. Because, for the most part, now we're talking most areas, buses are locals transport. Maybe on the Gold Coast it's a little different, but the majority of people that are going to use public transport for buses are locals, so they're going to know where they're getting off. But at the same time, if you're getting on a bus and you don't know where you're going, we're a pretty friendly bunch here in Australia. So the majority of bus drivers, if you just say to them, "I'm not sure where I'm getting off," they'll help you out and they'll let you know your stop's coming up next. But the other thing is, most people these days are going to have their Google Maps. They're going to know where their stop is that they're getting off. If you're planning your route, chances are you're probably going to count how many bus stops there are before you get off. Here's the thing. If you're a local, you know where your bus stop is. If you're not a local, then if you've managed to get yourself find the bus stop, get yourself onto the bus, then you're going to be savvy enough to figure out how many stops it is till you get off. So it's not rocket science. I find it interesting that she can't get her head around this. I mean, for me, even if I'm heading down to Melbourne and the trains have got the display which says what the next stop is, I still, in my head, have to count the number of stops before my stop. Even though I know the name of my stop and I know what the stop is beforehand, I still have this thing where I have to know how many stops before I get off. And maybe that's just because I don't go to Melbourne a lot and I'm only been in Victoria for 6 years. And perhaps people who live down in Melbourne don't worry about that. But let's give people credit. People aren't really that dumb.
Number 5. So I went to the mall when I first got here and I noticed people were carrying shopping carts everywhere they went, like all throughout the mall. Like you could take a grocery store shopping cart from the grocery store, pack it in with all your groceries that you just bought, and then roll it into Aritzia, for example, and go shopping for clothes in there, and then add bags that you bought from Aritzia, and then go to like a jewelry store or something. I don't know, it's just very weird. Everyone just does it here, and I actually really like it.
Well, I'm really curious about that. Is that something that you do see quite often on the Gold Coast? And is it tourists that do that on the Gold Coast? Because, well, at least here in Victoria and in Tassie, if you're in a shopping centre, you get your groceries and you put your groceries away in your car before you go to the other shops. Unless, of course, you've got your groceries, you're on your way back to the car, and you're just grabbing something quickly from a shop, then, etiquette-wise, that's considered acceptable. But most shops frown on people taking their shopping trolleys into their shops, and a lot of shops will have signage outside the shop saying, please do not bring shopping trolleys in here. So I'm just curious about her saying that it's commonplace in the Gold Coast. I mean, it could be an over-exaggeration. Maybe she saw someone doing that and just presumed that that was standard and that's what people do. But to me it seems very curious because, well, most places frown on you taking your shopping trolley into their store.
Number 6, the drugstores here are called chemists, and it's not like a huge thing that's like weird. Like I know it makes sense because the pharmacy is there, but it just sounded kind of weird when I first got here because I'm so used to drugstore. And now that I think about it, saying, oh, I'm just going to buy something from the drugstore, that sounds even weirder, going to the drugstore.
It's just one of those things, isn't it? To Australians, calling it a drugstore sounds odd because when we talk about drugs, we are mostly referring to illegal drugs. When we talk about things that we get from the chemist, they're usually a prescription, or we will be more specific and say Panadol or ibuprofen. We may, tongue-in-cheek these days, say drugs. But I think that's coming from American culture because it's not something that we used to do quite so much. But, chemist, pharmacist, drugstore, they're all the same.
Number 7, Thursdays here in the Gold Coast are their shopping days. So most days, Monday to Friday, everything, excluding Thursday, everything is closed relatively early. So malls close at like 4 or 5 o'clock. Restaurants, stores, businesses, they all close around the same time. Versus back in Canada where things are open till, 8, 9, 11 for grocery stores sometimes. I don't know, I think it's just where I live, it's really chill here, but most people aren't really open on weekends.
Okay, help me out here. Because I come from states like Tassie and Victoria where late night shopping is Friday night. Some areas will have late night shopping Thursday and Friday night, but it's not something where you would see it on Thursday night but not Friday. So why is it that in the Gold Coast? She also mentioned that restaurants close at 5. How's that possible? And she said that malls or, shopping centres close at 5. But if they close at 5, how do you get into the supermarket? Because supermarkets don't close at 5. Or at least not in any areas that I'm familiar with. For the most part, they're open till 9 o'clock in summertime, sometimes as late as 11. Same with places like Big W, Target, Kmart. They're open anywhere from like 7 to 9, possibly later in the summer. So, does the Gold Coast just completely shut down at 5? Or is she in a particular area that for some reason everything shuts down at 5? Because this has got me just a little bit confused.
Number 8, they say, how you're going. And the first time I heard that, I was like, oh, that's cute, how you're going, instead of how are you doing. So that was kind of interesting. So if you bump into someone and you're like, oh, I'm sorry, and they're like, oh, usually people would be like, oh, it's okay. Here they say, you're all right. And when I first heard that, I was like, you're all right. I was like, why am I just all right? Like, I took it like I'm literally just an all right person, versus what they really mean is, no, like, you're all right, you're okay is kind of the same meaning. But for some reason, my brain just took it weirdly and I like misinterpreted what they said. So now I'm used to it, but when I first heard it, I was just like, oh, I'm all right. Why am I just all right? Like, I don't know why.
Okay, so question for Queenslanders on this one. Do you say you're all right? Or do you say you're right? And that she is translating it in her head to you're all right. Because when we say you're right, we know what we're saying there, but perhaps in her head, for it to make sense, she has to lengthen it.
Number 9, so as you guys know, I've been on Bumble BFF looking for new girlfriends, and I noticed in the bio, a lot of people that are locals here will write like, oh, I like going for like a cheeky drink and a boogie. And I was like, what? A cheeky drink? What is a cheeky drink? Like a cute drink, or like, I don't know. And then I heard a boogie and I was like, okay, obviously that means I like to go dancing. But I thought it was so cute, like, oh, like I like to go boogieing. Like, it just seems like such a back in the disco age, you go for like a boogie or whatever. But they use that here as just like to go dancing, and I don't know, I just thought it was so adorable. And then my friend told me a cheeky drink would be like, if you were to go out for a drink during lunchtime, it'd be like a cheeky drink, because it's like, ooh, I don't really know how to explain it.
Maybe I'm showing my age here because I've never heard of a cheeky drink, so my attempts to explain it are probably going to be no better. But I'm thinking she means going for a drink at a time when you possibly shouldn't be going for a drink, like during work hours or whatever.
Alright, so number 10 is that people in Queensland, I don't know about the rest of Australia, I'm pretty sure it's a very Queensland thing or a Gold Coast thing, but people here don't wear shoes sometimes. And I mean, they don't wear shoes anywhere. You'll see it in the mall, they'll be shoeless. You'll see it on the tram. I was taking the tram once, and then this guy came on with a surfboard, which makes sense, you know, he went surfing, he doesn't need his shoes.
Now, when she first said this about people not wearing shoes, the sometimes was added in as an afterthought, and I think a lot of people who were not from Australia might miss that bit. And once again, we have the common conception that everyone in Australia gets around without shoes. And yet, she talks about one time on the tram when someone got on without shoes. So she's already showing that it's not like the entire population of Queensland or the Gold Coast that gets around with no shoes. She's talking about specific instances, which to me says it's not quite as commonplace as what she's saying. I'd love to hear from people from up that way as to sort of what percentage of people you would see during the day knocking about with no shoes.
Number 11, so the water in the toilets here are very, very shallow. So like the toilets are like this, right? And then usually the water is maybe like right here or something, but no, the toilet water level in Australia is like down here. It's like just a little bit of water.
Okay, I edited a bit out there because we don't need to hear her personal issues that she has with toilets having only a small amount of water in the bottom. You can use your imagination or you can go and watch the original video. But, you know, it's just the thing that is different. In America, apparently the water level is really, really high, which is why it swirls around when it goes down and why Americans seem to think that in Australia the water must go the other direction. But it doesn't, because it is so low down in the first place that it doesn't swirl when it goes. I just thought I'd throw that bit in.
Number 12, they have tiny light switches here. When I first saw them, I was like, why did they make them so small? It's just so much harder to press compared to like what we have back in Vancouver. And I'll show you guys, like for example, this is how it looks like. Focus. You see how small they are? And like sometimes when you're in a rush and you're just like, oh, I'm just gonna go and turn on the light, it's just like, it's so small. Only one finger nail can go on it to turn it on and off.
Because Canadians lack the fine motor skills to turn a switch with one single finger. That is such a bizarre thing to be worried about. Like, it's not like they're really, really hard to switch and you need the strength of your whole hand to switch the switch. Like, it only takes one finger to switch it.
The next thing, number 13, is how large their coins are. Like, they're freaking huge. The 20-cent coin is massive. I'm gonna like insert pictures to my right so you guys can see. But in Canada, our larger coins are like the $1, $2, you know, because they have more value to them. And then our 50 cents, like, sorry, we don't have 50 cents, but like 25 cents, 10 cents, 5 cents, it just gets smaller and smaller.
I get what she's saying, but if we look at Australian currency, originally $1 and $2 were notes. So when they introduced the dollar coin and the $2 coin, obviously they weren't going to make it bigger than the 50-cent coin. So they went the other way. So aside from that, when you go 50, 20, 10, 5, they do go smaller according to the value. But who carries coins these days anyway?
And I just hate it because anytime you use cash, you get so many coins back and it just takes up so much space. They're so thick and so heavy, and then you just have all these, like, I just don't understand why they would want to make the smaller coins so big and heavy.
But aside from the fact that hardly anyone uses cash these days as it is, why let your coins add up to the point where they are bulky and heavy? Most people, if they carry cash on them, then they're going to try and clear out those coins. There's nothing wrong with handing over a bunch of coins at the checkout. It's not like you have to pay with a $5 note every time and get a bunch of coins back.
I would hate to be like working like I don't know, a job where you get tips and people just like place them in jars, because a lot of people throw like 50 cents, the 20 cents in there, and when I look at those jars, they're just like filled with these big ass coins, and like if you were to take that home, it's just so heavy and inconvenient.
Why would you take the tips home from the tip jar like that? You put them in the till and you swap them out for notes.
And number 14. So this is about like job related field stuff. So if you work a Saturday, you get time and a half. So first of all, their minimum wage here is like 19-20 bucks, which is amazing. So if you work Monday to Friday, just a regular job, you would get like $20 as like a base level. And then if you work a Saturday, you get time and a half, and then if you work a Sunday, you get double time. And I don't know, that just blows my mind, because I would work Saturdays and Sundays all the time if that were the case, if I were really strapped for money, because it's just so easy. You know, like, you're getting so much money for just working on a different day. Number 15, this is the very last one. So holidays here, there's something called a holiday surcharge. If you're an employer and you hire people to work in your cafe, you have to pay them like time and a half because they're working on a holiday. And in order to kind of make up for how much you have to spend on being open on a holiday and hiring all these people that you're paying time and a half, they have a holiday surcharge to kind of balance out what they're spending on their employees and what they're making, to kind of make it more equal.
So if you actually go onto the Consumer Affairs webpage, you'll see that that is actually illegal. They can charge a surcharge when you pay by card, but the most that they can actually charge is whatever the amount is that it costs them for you to pay by card. So when you go somewhere and they're like whacking on a 10%, 15% surcharge just because it's a holiday or because it's a Sunday, they're actually breaking the law. So something to be aware of when you go into a business that does try to charge you those surcharges on those occasions. And to me, it's just pure greed, because my observation is that those are places that are usually super, super busy anyway on a public holiday or a Sunday or something. So they're more than making up for the cost of putting on extra staff. If you're losing money on having staff on a public holiday, then you need to look at how you are staffing your business, basically. Because you should be able to figure out a balance with your staffing that allows you to pay your staff what is owed to them while still making a profit. So if you put too many staff on, that's on you. It shouldn't be on the customer. So having had my little rant about surcharges, that brings us to the end of the video. I did edit out a few bits in this video where she spoke for longer with her explanations, just pretty much saying the same thing, just in a different way, just because of the length of this video. So the link for the original video is down below in the description if you wanted to go watch that. Thanks for listening. If you're new, please hit subscribe. Please hit the like button, and please leave your comments below. What are your thoughts on this video?